Focusing on the domain Eukarya, we're going to look at the kingdom animals, first looking at Protosome, and then later we'll focus on Deuterosome. So in this lecture, we'll be looking at and defining what is an animal, and then looking at different evolutionary trends following different phylums, as well as just different characteristics that we observe over time with evolution. So first, let's define what is an animal. So what makes an animal an animal? So if we look over here on our right-hand side, just look at all the different wildlife that exists. What makes an animal an animal is they tend to be multicellular, right? So versus unicellular, such as prokaryote. So they tend to be multicellular eukaryote. They're heterotroph, which means that they aren't able to make their own food source, and they tend to move. They do not have cell walls and are diploid. So the lack of cell wall is a characteristic that we often observe and associate with plant cells. And the majority of them are invertebrates. They also eat food internally. So unlike other kingdoms, such as the fungi system, that's able to digest the food externally, animals have to actually ingest their food and digest it internally. And they usually have sexual reproduction in order to increase genetic variability. Where did animals originally come from? Well, most scientists believe that animals evolved from protists, most likely a protosome. And so here you have an example of what might be an ancestry flagellate. So they have a flagella, which, if you recall, is an appendage that allows them to move. And so it's believed that animals probably evolved from an ancestor that kind of resembles a spherical colony of flagellate cell. So that means that each one of these cells have a flagella to the on their end, so there's appendages that allows them to move around in their environment. And it's because protists are most commonly related to animals that scientists believe that animals evolved from protists. So among the protists, it's most likely that we evolved from coangia flagellate. And so these are organisms that we can actually find living in many different water and marine surfaces. And the reason why is believed that this is where animals have the common ancestor is because they have certain genes that are similar to the genes that are found in all animals. And so this most likely resembles the common ancestor that animals all evolved from. So what we're going to do in this talk is we're actually going to follow these trends as we go from sponges or parazoa all the way to, for this section of the lecture, we're going to finish off with the proteasome, and then the next set of lectures we'll actually look at the deuterosome. And so we'll stop at arthropods. And so we're just going to follow and kind of see, as time went by and there was evolution, what are some of the characteristics that are associated with them. And so what are some of the trends that we do observe in animal evolution? Let's see, where should I stick myself? Okay, so animals are able to have tissues that form from what we call germ layers. And germ layers in embryo consist of 3 different types of germ layers. You have the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. So the ectoderm, if we look at this image right here, is the most outer layer that tends to be the skin. And then the mesoderm forms the blood, and the endoderm, most of the endoderm becomes your organ system. Other trends that we observe in animal evolution is transitioning from 2 to 3 germ layers, multicellular, and then symmetry, where we go from radial to bilateral, as well as segmentation, where we start segmenting, leading to specialization. As we go through the evolutionary trend, we'll kind of follow and we'll look at these different trends in evolution in a little more detail.